Hi, my name is Msrp, and today in this product review I'll be reviewing Lionel's latest release of the living legend and possibly one of the most famous steam locomotives in the world, the Union Pacific 844 in the beautiful Union Pacific Greyhound paint scheme.
Union Pacific 4014. Do you read me? Over. Roger that. Union Pacific 4014. I read you. Over. Start up and stand by. Over. Yes, sir. Start up and stand by.
To start this video off, let me go ahead and give a brief history lesson on Union Pacific 844 from her humble beginnings all the way up to her living legend status of today. Now, do take note, I am not a historian on 844, so please give this segment of the video a grain of salt as I may get a few of the facts a little bit wrong or may not mention some that you may already know. Union Pacific 844 is considered a northern type steam locomotive, which means she has a 4-8 four-wheel arrangement underneath her boiler. Originally, she was built by the American Locomotive Company, otherwise known as ALCO, in 1944 and was given the designation FEF-3. Now, because of this late date, UP 844 became the last steam locomotive ever delivered to the Union Pacific Railroad. Now, for its revenue service, 844 was designated to pull fast passenger trains along the UP route, such as the Overland Limited, the Los Angeles Limited, the Portland Rose, and then the famous Challenger passenger train. Now, in order to help pull these passenger trains, UP designed 844 and also the other FEF-3 locomotives with 80-inch diameter drivers, which were capable of pulling these passenger trains at a whopping 120 miles per hour. Now, even though these locomotives became very popular and very successful on the UP route, it sadly did not mean that they were safe from the inevitable dieselization of the UP. By 1959, when UP ended all steam operations on their route, 844 and all of her siblings were soon put into storage tracks to soon inevitably be scrapped to the end of their age. But fortunately, fate had a different idea for 844. By 1960, it seemed that the life of 844 would soon come to a daunting end, with her fire being dropped and being put on a storage track to awaiting the scrapper's torch to finally make the final blow across her boiler, and she being lost to history. But fortunately though, a few higher-ups inside UP realized that even though the steam era had been ended due to dieselization, there was still a nice, bright burning spark within the heart of the United States to keep steam alive. So, as a result, UP decided to start the steam program that we know and love today, and decided to choose their youngest FEF steam locomotive in their fleet, number 844, to be restored, repainted into the beautiful Greyhound passenger paint scheme, and be used for special publicity passenger runs across the United States. With a new lease on life, Union Pacific Railroad used 844 to the fullest by using her for publicity passenger runs across the United States. For example, she attended many events such as the Expo 74 in Spokane, Washington, the 1984 World's Fair in New Orleans, and even also celebrated the 50th anniversary celebration of the Los Angeles Union Passenger Terminal in 1989. By then, she was renumbered to 8444 due to a new diesel locomotive coming onto the UP roster being numbered 844, and so, in order to keep the confusion down, UP 844 soon became 8444. Now, throughout the next few decades, 844 continued to have a wonderful, successful excursion career by celebrating the Union Pacific Railroad in many different ways. But sadly though, by 1999, things soon came to a crashing blow when a boiler flue soon found itself cracking and her going under for another major restoration. Fortunately though, by November 10th, 2004, the UP steam crew were able to bring the living legend back to life and was back on the rails to celebrate even many more anniversaries. Such as in 2012, Union Pacific celebrated their 150th anniversary for their founding of the Union Pacific Railroad, and then as recent as 2019, the 150th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad, where she went on a grand tour from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Ogden, Utah, double-heading with Union Pacific Big Boy number 4014 to celebrate the festivities. As of the making of this video, UP-844 is still a part of the Steam Heritage Fleet of the Union Pacific Railroad, and is also can be found pulling excursion runs across the United States and making memories for young and old generations to come. Now, even though she is a steam locomotive and has faced many hard times, she can still be considered the living legend since she was able to surpass those odds and also still be a living steam locomotive in revenue service still to this day. Now that you know the history behind the real 844, let me now go ahead and go over the stats and facts of the model that you see right in front of you. This model was recently released in Lionel's 2015 Volume 1 catalog and soon starts showing up in front porches as well as hobby shops around spring to summertime of 2016. Now, for the measurements, both the locomotive and tender have a combined length of 28 3/4 of an inch long, and as a result, Lionel have these locomotives rated to have a minimum curve radius of 0.72. Under the hood, this locomotive is powered by one large flywheel motor and is also equipped with two fan-driven smoke units, which are used for both the main exhaust stack and for the smoking whistle. Now, in order to fill the smoke units with smoke fluid, you just simply pour the smoke fluid directly down either one of the two smokestacks on top of the locomotive. Now, for the sound features as well as the command system, this locomotive is equipped with Lionel's rail sound system and is also equipped with Lionel's legacy command system, which means you have at least 3 methods of operation. The first and preferred method is using Lionel's legacy Cab 2 command system, which will allow you to access all of the legacy features that this model has to offer. The second method is using Lionel's Team CC or Cab 1 command system, which will give you a lot of the features that the locomotive has to offer, but not as much as compared to the legacy command system. And then the final method is using a simple oval of track and a transformer and using the locomotive in conventional mode. Now that you have a better understanding on what this locomotive has to offer, let me now go ahead, take a closer look, and show you the wonderful detail that this model has to offer. Starting at the front of the locomotive, specifically down at the pilot, here you can see we have a nice die-cast metal pilot with a few bits of molded in and separately applied detail around it, such as molded in steps going up to the top part of the pilot, a separately applied brake hose detail, and then also a separately applied coupler cup bar with pin and link chain above it. And then finally, right in the center, we have a hidden semi-scale coupler that can fold on out or be stowed away as such. Looking on up from the pilot, you can see down below we have the air compressor shield with a grab iron on top, and also connected on either side of it, here you can see we have 2 handrails that go along the length of the boiler. And then on either side of the shield and handrails, here you can see we have the beginning of 2 nicely done, separately applied elephant ears, or otherwise known as smoke deflectors, on either side of the locomotive. Looking on up, here you can see we have the main central headlight for the locomotive with a nice number board on the bottom, and also 2 lit number boards on either side, which do come on when the locomotive is in operation. And then finally, looking on top, here you can see we have 2 separately applied marker lights, as well as 2 more lit number boards. And then right in the middle, here you can see we have a separately applied brass swinging bell right in the middle. And then finally, this locomotive also does have a swinging smoke box door front, and as you can see, it swings open and shut very nicely. Moving over to the engineer side of the locomotive, and as you can see, there is not a whole lot of detail to be seen on the boiler due to the smoke deflector covering it up, but I can say there is still a whole bunch of detail modeled behind the smoke deflector, such as separately applied pipework, the throttle linkage, the continuation of that handrail, some builder's plate behind it, and the various molded in details here and there. Now, looking at the smoke deflector itself, as you can see, it is nicely smoothed and painted in that lighter tone gray, with also a nice crisp yellow stripe running along the side, and detail-wise, along this yellow stripe, there is some molded in rivet detailing. Now, if you're wondering if you can take these smoke deflectors off, technically you can, theoretically speaking, since there is a screw holding it in place underneath the running board, but I would not suggest it since, one, you would be left with a big old screw hole in the middle of the running board, and also you would have the chance of possibly ruining the paintwork on either the smoke box, boiler, or even on the smoke deflectors themselves. But anyway, moving on down towards the bottom of the locomotive, here you can see we have the cylinders for the locomotive, which is nicely detailed and painted with the black face and polished cylinder heads. Here you can also see some detail in the form of a mechanical lubricator and also the beginning of the valve rod assembly, which is nicely darkened. And then finally down below, here you can see we have the pilot wheels for this locomotive. Continuing down the side of the locomotive, starting up at the top, you can see right on the top part of the locomotive we have the central sandbox, which has a few bits of detail in the form of 2 separately applied grab irons. Looking down below it, you can see we have the continuation of that grab iron as well as the throttle linkage. And then finally, for detail wise, as you can see on the boiler itself, there is a whole bunch of molded in detail in the form of boiler bands, rivet detailing, and a few other access points into the boiler shell. Coming on down, here you can see we have the running board, which has some nice safety tread on top, and also the continuation of that yellow stripe along the side. And then right underneath it, if you can see very well, is also a separately applied pipework underneath it. And then finally coming down towards the bottom, here you can see we have a separately applied automatic reverser going towards the valve gear. And then right off the bat, here you can see we have the 8 set of box pocket drivers, which are nicely painted in black, and then also the chemically darkened side rods to go with them. Looking towards the end of the locomotive, starting down at the bottom working up to the top, you can see right down below we have the firebox as well as the trailing trucks for this locomotive, and as you can see between these two there is a whole lot of detail to be shown. For example, there is a whole bunch of separately applied pipework along this side of the firebox as well as some molded in rivet detailing, and then on the trucks themselves here you can see we have 2 polished roller bearing caps, and then right in the center we have some separately applied brake rigging. Looking on up towards the boiler of the locomotive, here you can see we have the end of that running board with the continuation of that stripe, some molded in rivet detailing along the edge of it, some boiler bands, washout plugs, and also the end of both the handrail and throttle linkage towards the cab. And then finally coming towards the left-hand side of the screen, you can see we have the cab itself, which has its own set of nice details. Such as right in the front, we have a nice little window, which does have some clear plastic inserts for the glass. Looking over towards the side, on top here you can see we have a separately applied grab iron, a little molded in ledge underneath the window seal, and then we have 2 central windows, which too also have clear plastic inserts, and then the one towards the left can open like so. And then looking underneath the window sill itself, here you can see we have some more yellow striping, a nice little walking ledge, some molded in rivet detailing, and then right in the center, the 844 typed right along the side of it, and then the engine specifications underneath the numbers. Moving on around towards the back of the locomotive, and as you can see, there is really not a whole lot of detail to be shown due to this locomotive having an all-weather cab, which means the back of the cab is closed off to all of the elements. Now, thankfully though, even though this locomotive has really a closed off back head, Lionel still went ahead and gave us a bit of detail within the cab, such as a minorly detailed back head, a cab light on the top, and then 2 hand-painted crew figures on either side of the cab. Now, looking towards the back of the cab itself, here you can also see Lionel gave us a bit of molded in detail, such as 2 molded in doors with windows in the middle with clear plastic inserts, a whole bunch of molded in rivet detailing along the doorways and the perimeter, and then finally some molded in pipework for electrical work as lighting and such, and then finally on either side of the cab 2 separately applied handrails. And then finally looking towards the bottom of the locomotive, here you can see we have the locomotive end of the wireless drawbar with its infrared sensor on top, which sends signals between the locomotive and tender. Taking a quick look at the fireman side of the locomotive, and compared to the engineer side, there is really not a whole lot of difference in the sense of detail on this side, but there are a few minute differences, such as a separately applied feed water pump, some separately applied pipe work, a separately applied dynamo on top of the boiler, and then 3 molded in steps leading up to it. Looking on top of the boiler, starting from the right and working to the left, you can see right in the front of the smoke box we have a molded in Worthington feed water heater, and then right behind that here you can also see we have the shrouded exhaust stacks, in this case 2 of them, and then right behind it here you can see we have a separately applied whistle with a nice lead to it and a hand painted valve right on the other side of it. Now, as I stated earlier on in this video, this locomotive is equipped with 2 fan-driven smoke units, which operate both the main exhaust and also the smoking whistle. Now, in order to fill both smoke units with smoke fluid, you just simply take your smoke fluid and pour it directly down either one of these 2 stacks. Moving on down, here you can see we have a molded in superheater patch on top with a few bits of molded in grab irons and rivet detailing. And then right behind that, here you can see we have a separately applied pipework and then that central sand dome with some molded in hatches on top. Finally, coming towards the end of the boiler, starting again over at the right hand side, here you can see we have 3 separately applied pop-off valves with a hand-painted valve towards the side of it. And then looking over to the left hand side, here you can see we have 3 molded in doors which could probably access steam powered equipment. And then finally looking at the roof of the cab, here you can see we have a lot of molded in rivet detailing. And then right in the middle, here you can see we have an operational air vent on top of the cab. Now that I've shown you all of the wonderful detail on the locomotive, let me now go ahead and move on to the tender and show you what it has to offer. Starting at the front of the tender, looking down below, here you can see we have the tender end of that wireless drawbar with its receiving end of the infrared sensor. Looking on up, here you can see we have a whole bunch of molded in pipework, valves, and then on the other side of it, 2 separately applied ladders going up to the top tender deck. Moving on up, here you can see we have 2 separately applied handrails on either side of the tender, and then on the front face itself, here you can see we have a whole bunch of molded in details, such as molded in toolboxes, ladder stanchions, and a whole bunch of rivet detailing. Moving on around to the engineer side of the tender, and as you can see, right off the bat, we have a continuation of that beautiful 2-tone gray of the Greyhound paint scheme, Union Pacific nicely typed along the central stripe, and also a continuation of molded in rivet detailing along the side of this panel. Now, for other details, here you can also see towards the left, we have a separately applied ladder going up to the top deck of the tender. Looking down below, here you can see we have 2 separately applied hooks, some separately applied pipework, a molded in tool chest for a fire hose, and then right down below we have the 14-wheel centipede wheel truck set for this tender. And as you can see, they have a whole bunch of spring rigging, brake rigging, and also each roller cap bearing is nicely polished. Taking a look at the back of the tender, starting down at the bottom working up to the top, you can see right down below we have the locomotive's electrocoupler, which can be thrown by either using Lionel's Legacy or TMCC command system. On either side of it, here you can also see we have 2 molded in grab irons. And then finally looking at the back tender plate itself, you can see there is still a whole lot to be shown. For example, some more molded in rivet detailing, the capacity figures for this tender, up towards the top, UP, and also the 844 typed in that beautiful Greyhound yellow. And then finally looking towards the top, here you can see we have 2 separately applied rear marker lights with molded in electrical work. And then finally in the center of the top part of the tender, here you can see we have 2 curved grab irons, and then right in the middle, a separately applied red reverser light. Finally, taking a quick look at the top part of the tender, starting over on the right hand side, here you can see on top of the oil tank deck, we have 2 separately applied grab irons on either edge, an array of separately applied details such as dipsticks and pipework. Along the top part of the deck itself, here you can see we have some more molded in rivet detailing. And then right in the middle, here you can see we have a separately applied oil hatch, which unfortunately on this model does not open. Moving over to the left-hand side of the tender, with specifically the water tank, here you can see similar to the oil side, we have yet 2 more separately applied grab irons on either edge, some more molded in rivet detailing, and then along the middle, here you can see we have 3 water hatches, which do open up like so. And in the third one, here you can see it reveals the master volume control knob for the speaker found within the tender. Now that I've shown you both the locomotive and tender, let me now go ahead, fire up the locomotive, and give you a sampling of the sound features that this model has to offer.
This is a dispatcher. Do you copy? Roger that, dispatcher. I read you. Over. Very good. Start up and hold. Acknowledged. Let's get to work. Out.
Alrighty, now that I've got the locomotive fired up, let me now go ahead and begin giving that sampling with, first off, the quillable whistle. Next, here is the bell. Here is the steam blowdown sound. Next, here is both the oil and water fill-up sounds.
Acknowledged. Out. The water's full. Over. Copy that. Out.
And then finally, here is a quick sampling of both the tower and crew talk sounds.
Dispatcher, I'm made up. Am I cleared to the outbound? Over. Roger, your track is cleared. Dispatcher, over. Roger that. Cleared to move. Here we go. Out. This is the dispatcher. Hold your position. Over. Copy that, dispatcher. Let me know when I'm clear. Out. Dispatcher, still wondering about that signal. Can we depart to the main line? Over. Signal indication. Over. Yes, sir. Sit tight. Out. Dispatcher, you're clear to pull. Over. That's great. Cleared to move. Here we go. Out. Dispatcher, the oil's full. Am I clear to make a move? Over. Roger, your track is cleared. Dispatcher, over. Copy that, dispatcher. Cleared outbound. Out.
Alrighty, I got a mixed freight coupled up behind the tender. We've been given the green light, so let's go ahead and take this beautiful model for a spin around the layout.
Tower, we are moving. Over. Roger that. Have a good run. Out. Thank you, sir. Dispatcher out. Dispatcher, here we go. Over. Copy that. Keep rolling. Out. Dispatcher, are we clear through the crossing? Over. Thank you, Monkey. Clear signal. Out. Going to the register room to sign out. Out.
Well, that about wraps up this product review, but before you go, let me go ahead and answer the two questions that I normally answer around this time of the video, and they are, what is the original MSRP price for one of these models, and also, what is my personal opinion on it? Well, to start off, the original MSRP price from 2015 is right at $1,700. Now, if you're wanting to pick up one of these beautiful models, you'll be pretty hard pressed to find one at your local hobby shops since this model's been out for about 6 years. But what I would really suggest is going to maybe on the second-hand market such as eBay or even at a train show and possibly go looking there, where you'll probably be able to find either a slightly used model or maybe in mint condition. Depends on the pricing, and since these models yet again have been out for about 6 years, they have gone up in price, so beware. Now that you know what the original MSRP price is on one of these beautiful models, let me now go ahead and answer the second question, which is, what is my personal opinion on it? Well, to start off, this locomotive, even after 6 years of being out on the market, is still very beautiful. The lines are extremely crisp, the smoke unit still holds a candle to very many other modern steam locomotives, and the performance is just phenomenal. Overall, I would dare say this locomotive would run up against even the real 844 in the sense of how realistic it is, even in model form. So, if you're wanting to pick up a model of 844, I would highly suggest getting the Lionel version either in the Greyhound or even in the 8444 or even in the normal straight up black version because these are just wonderful models. That's it for this video, but before I go, I just want to say thank you very much for clicking on this video and also watching it to the very end. It takes a long time for me to produce good quality videos for you to enjoy, so I do very much appreciate your support. Now, if you would like to continue to support my channel, please do click on that subscribe button because then you'll no longer miss any of the future videos that I produce. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please do click on that like button because that lets me know that you enjoy this type of content that I'm producing and also lets YouTube know that my channel is actually worth something. But anyway, my name is Trainmaster04 and I'll be seeing you next time.